Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make visual aids. So this was like a love-hate relationship because I really liked doing it because it involved a lot of images, a lot of color, and I love color and I love images. So it always got me excited, but it is a lot of work. It's time consuming. It takes so long to do. And also, it's really fun to do. It's really fun breaking down scientific information into images that you can use when you explaining these difficult concepts to your patients. So that's why we make visual aids. It's really going to help you in your community service here, in your private practices, or whatever it is you're going to be doing afterwards, but also in your community nutrition blocks, etc. It really helps showing images to people to try and help them understand the complicated concepts. For example, diabetes. Not everybody understands what's diabetes, or you know um I don't know, short bowel syndrome or something like that, right? So visuals really help with that. So on the cover image, you obviously notice these colorful meringues. And I mean, if you look at it, you want to just eat it up, right? This is exactly why kids love candy, apart from it being sweet and all of that. But it's visually appealing, it's inviting, it's appetizing. So this is exactly what your visual aid should be. It should be colorful. There should be a balance between, the different colors used, but also there should be some white spaces, etc. But we're going to get into that in this video. So let's jump into it. Okay, so now we come to the tips. And the first one is please start your visual aid early, like as soon as you get that assignment to do, or as soon as you have some free time. Please, I'm like begging you, start it ASAP. Like, this is important that you start it really, really early. I'm about to tell you a story about my first visual aid that I made. It was for an assignment in, I think it was third year or something. Anyways, third year undergrad, and I had to do a visual aid. Okay, it was not good at all. Like, I look at that and I'm like, what was I thinking? I wasn't thinking. Okay, that's the whole problem. I wasn't thinking. So we're gonna get into that story because you do not want to leave this thing for last minute. Trust me on this one, please. If you do anything, you start this visual aid ASAP. Like, it's important, okay? You put it first on your to-do list. You need to start with it. So things were starting to get super hectic in the degree, and we had like other assignments going on as well, and we got this visual aid. But I think it was a few days in after they've told us to do a visual aid, whatever. I haven't started with this thing, by the way. I was focusing on other stuff. Okay, here we go, like 2-3 days before it's actually due, I decided to start with it. It was absolutely disastrous. It was so stressful. Okay, I got it done somehow, but I just, wow, it was so stressful. I chose to do it on Word. Please don't ever do a visual aid on Word. It is a nightmare. You are going to have to search for images on the thing, and images just move, and it's a nightmare. Please don't ever do a visual aid on Word. Don't do it, okay? Do not do it. Use other platforms like Canva. I did my visual aids on Canva after that, the first one. I used Canva. I used all the free stuff on Canva. I didn't do the 30-day free trial of Canva Pro at all. I just used all the free stuff on Canva. Okay? Don't do it on Word. Okay? Because then I found myself trying to cram in as much information as possible into this visual aid that I had to do. It was on HIV. Okay? I'm going to show it to you because, yeah, it's an example of what a visual aid should not really look like. Okay, yeah, there's some positives here and there, but in general, I wouldn't do it that way. It looks really bad, and also it was quite rushed, so I didn't include enough information, or it was just not friendly, like visually friendly, if I can put it that way. It wasn't simple enough to understand. I mean, I passed the assignment, whatever, but it was just horrible. And then I found myself submitting like last minute kind of thing, and by the time it uploads onto the portal, oh yeah, it was disastrous. So don't do it. You can't do a visual aid in 2 or 3 days, okay, unless you have a really strong, good visual aid that has already been made, and then using some of information from that one for your new one. But in in that case, I mean, besides that, if you're starting from absolute scratch, you're making your first one, please start early, and please make it really, really good, so that when you do your future visual aids, it is so much easier. Okay, because everything is almost based on South African food-based dietary guidelines, because it's healthy eating. It can be applied to many things. For example, constipation. It can also be applied to diabetes. It can be applied to HIV. So healthy eating always, and it's based on South African food-based dietary guidelines, or whatever guidelines they want you to base it on. But generally, that's what we use. So yeah, I'm gonna show you the my first attempt at a visual aid and what not to do. Okay, so that you know, and then I'm gonna show you later on in this video what you should do. Okay, so for the assignment, there was a specific criteria, etc., that I tried to follow. They said you must include healthy eating, all of that. Okay, so, and you need to explain the disease condition and what's important, and medication and side effects, etc. Okay, but now if we look at the healthy eating image on the left, this looks really untidy. Like, even though there's white spaces in between, you can see the images. Yeah, this is really not well organized, okay, at all. I mean, I get that I wanted to try and add in like veggies and stuff. This could have been done a little bit more better. Like, this does not look good at all. I tried to put in like a highlighter outline thingy for each image, like a glow thing. That was just, yeah, the milk image, no, it's so unclear, completely horrible. Like, yeah, please don't do this, okay? Go onto Canva, they have some nice icons, and you can just use things from there. Okay, most of the stuff is free, so yeah. And then I try to use the plate model, obviously. So half the plate veggies, a quarter protein, and then a quarter starch in your fats and your milk, but it was just not coming together at all. Okay, it's an attempt, obviously, like with everything. Your first attempt is always not that great. But yeah, so that was my attempt. And then I think I don't know. I don't know about this explanation of what happens to you, when you get sick, or when you have HIV. I'm not sure about this. I try to explain the fact that we have an immune system that is soldiers in our body. This is happens in a normal in a person that is healthy, basically does not have any other disease condition. Okay. And then the immune system basically prevents us, or protects you from getting severely ill, and you become happy then, or that's why the smiley's face. So you okay, your immune system fights off bacteria, etc., and then you're fine. Okay, but now if you have HIV, your immune system is down. This was what was going on in my head at that time. Okay, I think it could have been explained a bit better. Like, I don't know about these images. Anyways, but these were the images that I got from Hood. Okay, anyways, and then so if you have any other bacteria or foreign organism coming into your body, you don't have a strong immune system because it's down. I mean, from the amount that we have here, the amount of soldiers that we have here is more obviously compared to the HIV infected person, and so they tend to get sick very quickly. Okay, so they can't really fight off illnesses that well. So that's what I was trying to explain. And then these are the symptoms. Okay, so yeah, I don't, yeah, I think this wasn't, yeah, wasn't very clear. I'm not sure about these images, but okay. I mean, this one you can see, okay, the girl coughing, headache, you lose a lot of weight, so weight loss, you sleep a lot, you're really tired, etc. Okay. Then with the wording and all of that on this, um, yeah, this visual aid basically. So we have vitamin C, we have vitamin B, and vitamin A. That's important for immunity. But your patient's not going to understand what's immunity, okay, unless they have a medical background, unless, they have some sort of, they really interested in their health, etc., etc. Okay, I'm not going to go into that, but I mean, let's try and just break it down very, very simply. So this was one of the big things that you shouldn't have in your visual aid. Don't mention vitamin C and vitamin B and vitamin A rich foods because they're going to overlap. So in the case of vitamin A, we have spinach. We also have spinach in the B vitamins because it's all your green leafy veg and cruciferous veg. Okay, so it's gonna really tend to overlap. So instead, obviously just mention veg. You don't need to mention the specific nutrients. Okay, if we really want a focus on the specific foods, not really nutrients, because yeah, people eat in terms of food. So this, I would really take out the vitamin C, vitamin A things, like really, I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, same with this year. Like, I mean, B12, obviously B12 source is going to be the same as iron-rich sources, the same as zinc, for example, like the same as protein. So really, this was really not that great. Okay. And then, yeah, please don't do it like this. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay. Don't, don't do that. Was really weird visual aid. And then I tried to explain the medications as well that's normally taken. Um, so I think in terms of this one, maybe it's okay, you know. Um, but the others, yeah, I'm not. What does that mean? Like, what does So it needs to be clear. It needs to be a little bit more, um, like focused on the food groups instead of focusing on the nutrients like iron and zinc and omega-3 and 6 and all of that there. So really try and focus on veg, carbs, proteins, things like that. Okay, so this is an example of a fail on how to do a visual aid. So don't do it like this, okay? I mean, okay, this image is fine. I used red here to code. So to say, obviously, red means danger. We'll stay away from these. So put an X there, put everything in a red block, and yeah, try and stay away from all of these things because they're not healthy, whatever. Okay, but yeah, let's move on to the next step. Okay, so now it's time for your rough outline. Okay, you take your criteria if you're doing this for an assignment, or you take the topic of your presentation or whatever it is, and you put it beside you, and you take a piece of paper, or you do this like roughly on a Word document or whatever it is, and you make a rough outline. So this is all the information that you want to include in your visual aid, or you need to include in your visual aid. So for example, I'm going to include a mind map, right? For example, and the definition of my disease condition, the symptoms of the disease condition. Maybe I want to include the South African food-based dietary guidelines, etc. So you know exactly what your visual aid should be, for like the information that should be in your visual aid, so that it prevents you from missing out information, from leaving out information, things like that. So we're going to transfer our outline onto a template. Okay, so now we're transferring all of our headings that we have on our outline onto the template. So my big tip to you is use a very simple template. What I do normally is go onto Canva, right, and just choose a blank document and add in all the headings. For example, the first page I got mind map, we got what is diabetes, how do I feel, and the South African food-based dietary guidelines. So I know on each page what information needs to be added to it. Okay, I don't use any fancy templates because it might complicate things. It might make your document look quite cluttered. So I choose, or I opt for plain blank white piece of paper, basically blank piece of paper, and I go accordingly. You can use different color backgrounds if you'd like, etc. But the simpler, I think, the better. If you're going to use an infographic template, it might be too cluttered, in my opinion. But if you're using a plain piece of paper, I think it's a bit better. It gives you more flexibility in terms of the information that you would like to present. Again, please don't use Word for a visual aid. It is not visual aid friendly. Okay, so now we come to our last two tips, which is very interlinked. So use easy to understand images and language. Try as far as possible to stay away from unnecessary jargon. For example, amino acids, hydrolyzed, for example, glycogenolysis, things like that. Okay, let's try to avoid those hectic words. Okay, and yes, definitely use words that is related to your topic. For example, with diabetes, you're going to be using pancreas, you're going to be using insulin, glucose, but use images that represents these words so that it's easy for us to explain to patients. So use the appropriate jargon. Okay, and then also with easy to understand images, again, it needs to be culturally appropriate to the South African population. Try to avoid using like tofu or, things that are not, or like bok choy. Not everybody eats bok choy. So let's try to avoid that. Let's try to avoid using a lot of like medical images or microscopic images. A lot of those are not that great because your audience might not understand what you're trying to say. So simple images is often the best, and clear images as well, so that your audience can relate. And then again, the design details. So color coding is important. Green means good for you. Red means let's try and avoid those things. Orange may mean, be cautious about these things. Let's try not to eat this very often. Yes, you can eat them, but not very often. Okay. The image size is important because you may have an elderly audience where the eyesight might not be so great. So take that into consideration. Try to avoid using too large images. That might be overwhelming, or images that are too small, that is unclear, that you're unable to see. Also make sure that you have enough white or blank spacing between each picture, each element of your visual aid. It helps with the visual aid flow. It helps understand the information that's being presented, and overall, like the neatness of the document itself. So yeah, so now I'm going to be showing you a visual aid that is designed quite, I want to say, in a better way than the first one that was designed. So it's my second visual aid that I made for diabetes. that looks much better than the first one. And I will be speaking about, the white blank spacing, color coding, etc.
Okay, so this is a diabetes visual aid. So right from the top, okay, I have a little cover sheet here. It's very simplistic. I mean, you can do your cover sheet however you'd like to. Okay, I just did something really weird like this. I don't know why, I just was in a rush. Anyways, then you can, if you want to, this is not something that, yeah, I think it's nice to have like a little mind map type of thing that you're going to explain to your patient. Say you have a newly diagnosed diabetic that you have to educate. So you can go to them and be like, okay, today we're going to discuss what is diabetes, which is the first point, the second point, which is the South African food-based dietary guidelines. So in this task that I had to do, they wanted us to base everything on the South African food-based dietary guidelines. Okay, they could ask you to base it on, like, I don't know, the food plate model or something, for example, or whichever guidelines you want to work with, or they you require to work with. You can base it on that. But I just based it on this because of the criteria requirements. Okay. Then I added in things like the medications because they wanted me to extra stuff like exercise. Obviously, exercise is important. Diabetes management. I gave a little summary in the complications. Complications is something I'm not going to start with in the beginning. I'm not going to tell somebody because you have diabetes now, you might have kidney failure, and then you might need dialysis. Okay, that's not something I'm going to do because, especially if the person is like newly diagnosed and there's nothing wrong with their kidneys, I'm not going to tell them that first because that's just really going to freak them out. It's really going to make somebody scared. Okay, so I wouldn't start with the complications first. Okay, just a side note. That was now really off topic, but side note. Then, um, portion size is always very important in diabetes. Then you have recommendations, you know, plate. I think I used the plate model here as well, and other things like alcohol. So you can really, if you look at the topic, you look at what's important in that topic. So that's why your rough outline is important. You go to diabetes, you go, okay, what's important diabetes? Obviously, the type of starch that you eating, obviously your meal distribution, obviously no sugar, exercise always really important, things like that. Okay. So you can just say you encouraging them to do some exercise because I mean, obviously I'm not a physio, so I don't know what specific exercise, but you can just be like, you should try and do some exercise, even if it's walking or something like that. Okay. Then I go on to explain what is diabetes. Okay, so what happens in a person that doesn't have diabetes and what happens in a person that does have diabetes. Okay, on hindsight, I don't think I would put normal here. I'd probably put like person without diabetes because a person with diabetes is not abnormal, if that makes sense. Okay, so I would just, yeah, scratch the normal. That's really weird. Anyways, so I go on to explain. I mean, I'm able to do this, you know, anyone can explain this. It's very easy if you look at the images. So because I used some jargon, I used some images to represent that. So glucose is represented by the sandwich, right? So we have a few sandwiches, and this little, I don't know, blue grayish part is the blood. So glucose goes into your blood after you've eaten. Okay, the guy is eating. Glucose goes into your blood and then it goes into your cells. So the smiley faces represents the cells, and I've added in doors there because I know I'm going to be needing them afterwards. Okay, to explain. For example, in a patient with diabetes, the sugar doesn't go through, it can't enter into the cells because the doors are closed. Okay, so that's how you can explain diabetes to a patient. Very, very simple. Okay. I haven't even gotten into type 1 and type 2 yet, but that's a very simple explanation. of what happens. Then I go into describing type 1 diabetes using the lock and key model. Lots of people do this or use this model. You can use it as well using different images. You don't have to use the same images. So in this one, I used a little weird shape with a smiley face to represent the pancreas. Pancreas is important to include here, obviously, because we're dealing with diabetes. It's important in production of hormones, etc. Okay, so and then I use the keys to represent insulin. So I always use an image and then put a little tag along with it just to say, okay, and then I use the same color so that we know, okay, insulin, gray, key, insulin is gray, for example. Okay. Also, the normal, I put green, and then diabetes, I put in a different color. But I would say not diabetes, diabetes, for example, okay, because these people are normal, okay, they're not abnormal. Like, I really don't know why I did this one, but okay. Anyways, I can go back and change that on my template. Okay, so I then proceed to explain. The key opens up the lock to the door, and the sandwich can move in. So the cells have sugar or glucose. Okay. In the previous image, I've shown, okay, cells is the smiley face. I don't have to put the tag in again because it's already shown, right? But in type 1 diabetic, there's no insulin production, the door can't be opened or the lock can't be opened, so the sugar can't move into the cell. So that's how you can easily explain it to the patient. Also notice that there is lots of white spaces. The images are not too small. They're not too big either. They're not really overlapping. Okay, that one is, but to show that it's, coming out of the pancreas. The insulin is coming out of the pancreas. So that's obviously for explanation. But other than that, I think it's I want to say it's decent. So you can take inspiration from this. I go on to explain how you're going to be feeling if you do have diabetes or symptoms of diabetes, frequent urination, guy running to the toilet, constant thirst, weight loss, etc. And then I go on to explain type 2 diabetes. Then I use the South African food-based dietary guideline. I outlined it with green to show that it is something that's good and etc. And the image itself tells you the portion sizes. It's representative of the portion size. The veg is really huge, like a big circle, which means we need it a lot. We also have starch, proteins, dairy, etc. etc. Okay, so you can use this image as an actual education point for your patient. Okay. So that's why images are so powerful. They really convey a lot and they give a lot of education and information to you. So choose your images wisely, okay? And obviously it's really well designed. Yeah. And then I go into each circle and explain each one. So complex starches, simple starches. I use simple with orange, meaning you shouldn't be eating them too much. I use the complex with a green background to indicate that you can have them because like every day because they are lower in GI. So green means go, you can go ahead and have them, for example. I tried to use clear images for each one. I tried not to put the brand names on the images, things that people would understand, all of that. So make sure that your images are clear, people can understand it. I can see that that's pasta, that's bread, potatoes, bran muffin, whatever. Okay, so try and use clear images is basically what I'm trying to get, because with these images, say you now need to do something on constipation and now you want people to eat more fruits or say you're doing something on diarrhea and you have a banana. I can just copy and paste. So copy this on from this document onto the next. It makes my life easier. They also wanted us to add in like in the food sources in three different languages or whatever. If you don't want to add in like any writing to your visual aid, that's fine. The headings I think would be important. If you just want to explain the images, you can do that without adding in any of these extra information. It also speaks volumes, the image itself, right? For example, and then again with color, I use red to say, okay, avoid all of these starches. completely. Uh, and then for example, fruits and veg, I put in green, but then again, I color coded each little circle. So with veg, I did green, starch was brown, etc. The proteins was purple. Try and also use culturally appropriate things or people or food that people will understand. Now, like the population that we work with, or the patient population specifically that we work with, not many people eat tofu. I'm not going to add tofu to a protein source, okay? Because they're not, but they're going to eat tripe, or they're going to eat chicken feet, or cow's head, whatever. So you can add those things in, and obviously go on to explain to your patient, you know, etc., etc. So yeah, that's basically a visual aid, and how you can space it out, etc. It's not perfect. Once again, you can design it according to your own um, task needs or whatever, which like if you're giving a presentation, etc. But yeah.
Okay, so that was visual aids explained. Whatever I presented to you was basically designed by me. The first visual aid I showed you was completely fail. Um, the second one was done much better. Also, I completed that one as well. So you can take inspiration from that. Obviously, try and come up with your, using different images, all of that. And then, yeah, I hope this video was useful to you. And leave any questions or comments in the comment section. And thank you so much for watching.